Gentlemen, great to see you both. We're excited here. Got some great guests today. They're going to introduce themselves in a moment. Fred Dawkins and Jeff Spence, two guys I've known for combined probably 35 years if I combine the amount of time I've known you both. We're going to talk about 2025 and always exciting, a new year, opportunity to reset your goals, stop those bad habits, and get focused on a new year. So excited. I'd like to start off with Fred Dawkins. Fred, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Nick, and I'm excited for this opportunity to talk with Jeff and with you about what 2025 might hold. I'm an employment lawyer by trade. I started my career with some large law firms in Atlanta. About 11 years ago, I started my own law firm. I continue to focus on employment-related issues, help businesses manage any personnel problem that has a legal dimension, which could include onboarding, harassment, discrimination prevention, leave management, which is probably one of the hottest areas right now, non-competition, and also litigation. I've got a trial coming up in January, so I try to keep folks out of court, but if they need to go to court, I'm happy to represent them. I also, since I started my own firm, have done some general business litigation, contract disputes, and so forth. So that's what I do in a nutshell, and look forward to 2025, embracing it and challenging whatever challenges come.
Great. And let me just ask a quick question. Where do you reside in Metro Atlanta? And
I live in unincorporated Snellville on the south part of Gwinnett County. It's literally as far south in Gwinnett County as you can get. My property abuts the DeKalb Gwinnett line.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that. I knew you were down
So
that way.
I've been a Gwinnetian since 1994. I've been involved with the chamber for a minute. I'm not sure how long it's been.
You've been on the board for 6 years?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I know it's been a bit. But I've remained involved because I think the chamber does a really good job of supporting businesses, creating opportunities for business owners to expand their networks and learn new things, and that's hopefully what today's program will provide.
Great. Jeff Spence, tell us about yourself.
Jeff Spence, not as impressive as Fred Dawkins, but I'm a kind of an international finance guy, I guess, kind of the Forrest Gump of finance. And so I've been buying, building, and selling companies for 25 years since I moved to Suwannee in Gwinnett County. So I do primarily love to buy companies that are in strange markets and strange lands that have got a bunch of weird hair on them that you got to try to solve for. So whether it's volcanoes, some kind of weird eruptions, there's something happening that no one else wants to touch. It's typically the kind of stuff that I'll jump into and try to buy and fix and sell. So it's taken me to over 100 countries and done deals in probably 45 of them. And so I don't have extraordinary local ties. We do own a company in Gwinnett County, which is super cool. But that's kind of an oddity for me that typically they're somewhere 9,000 miles away or several time zones at least. But I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining us. So we've got some things to talk about. Obviously, the theme is 2025. So let's get right into it. Fred, we'll start with you. Workforce and workplace culture, a favorite topic of a lot of our guests. And what do you see as trends or policies? It's very interesting, all the big companies that are getting rid of their work remote policies or adjusting them dramatically. What do you see as a trend for 2025?
I think that's probably going to be one of the bigger trends is companies requiring their workers to come back in to the workplace. I know some of my clients are already doing it with 3 days a week, and I think it may get closer to 5 days a week, but that's definitely going to continue. And with the pandemic, I think everyone had to adjust and figure out a way to engage their team members and still get work done. But maybe it's a function of me being how old I am. I don't think there's anything that replaces the face-to-face interaction. And Zoom is a great platform, but when you're sitting across the table from someone, it's a little bit different level of engagement than seeing them on a screen. And so I think that companies are going to move back towards that to the fullest extent possible, just to kind of recapture the synergy that comes from being in the same room and talking and seeing someone's reaction when you put an idea on the table. I think the challenge is going to be that many folks in the workforce have gotten used to the convenience of being able to work from home. And it may cause some individuals to look at other options if they don't want to come back into the workplace. Now, some cynics may say that companies will institute return to work policies to kind of cull some of the herd, for lack of a better way to put it. And there may be some of that, but I think any company that's using return to work policies to thin out their workforce probably has larger issues that they need to address. So a company that's doing it because they just want to bring folks back in and just get the teamwork and so forth, I think that is something that's going to continue in 2025. And I have my own solo law practice, so I don't have teamwork. That's just me. But
so you're present all the time.
I am.
You're always there.
I'm always there.
Yeah.
Not always paying attention, but I'm always there. But even when I was working in the large law firms, it was very valuable for me as I was learning and honing my craft to just be able to step next door to one of my colleagues and say, I'm thinking about it this way. Does that make sense? And I think that kind of engagement that's so easy to do is one of the reasons that companies want to bring folks back into the workplace. So I think that tension between companies wanting to capture that and workers being used to, party down below but work up top, that's going to be a challenge, but it's one that I think most companies will figure out a way to manage one way or the other.
I love your mullet analogy there for a second. That was great. But you just said something that's really sparks a little something to chat about, which is you mentioned in your younger career, and as I mentor really more Gen Zs today, and someone's looking for their first career start, they just graduated from college, and I'll say, well, tell me what you're looking for. And 100% of them say, well, I want a lot of flexibility. And I said, well, you actually should have zero flexibility because you whatever you learned in college is great, but you don't know anything. And the best way to learn are from those millennials and those Gen Zs in the office. And you negotiate 1 day a week, that's fine, or do the 4-day work week so you can have a 3-day weekend. But you need to get in the office because you don't know what you don't know. And you will not learn that sitting in your living room or your office or wherever you are. And because that just all that knowledge that an older person, more experienced person can pass on. You missing that? I mean, that's how I grew. And I think that's insightful that you mentioned that.
I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, most of the new folks coming into the workplace don't have that philosophy. But I would like to think that they're open to the possibility that I may learn something from Nick Messino. He's obviously figured it out because he's the CEO of the chamber. So maybe it's worth at least listening to what he has to say. And if I can take 15% of it and apply it to how I want to approach work, then I'm for the bet that's to my benefit.
Great. Thank you for the compliment, by the way. Jeff,
I don't have the same compliment for you. I think a counter thought to that. One is I think that first, yes, I think that the latest generation. There's always right. It's always the latest generation that's always impacting us negatively. We were the only ones growing up that were perfect as we went through. Everybody else is the latest generation. It's horrible, but I think whether it's COVID or whether it's just social media, their sense is that the world of work is done, riding my bike or sitting in a subway station somewhere, doing selfies or sitting in a coffee shop. And you can't learn in those environments. Those aren't great learning environments. But I think that we're making a decision in businesses. I say we are. I think it's just as an easy thing. We run businesses, unfortunately, in the wrong way to minimize management complexity. And that's not the objective of a business, is to minimize management complexity, right? So what we do is we have these decisions and we say, okay, we want to go complete remote, right? Complete remote. Everybody go work remote. Well, it minimizes my management. Everybody's working remote. Then we go, that's not working. Everybody come back to the office, right? So I'm making a single decision for 1,000 people, and when there should be complexity to my management, I should be trying to optimize my team. And in many cases, remote's fantastic. Meaning, and by the way, I actually want to buy these guys by the drink. I want to have them be paid for how they're contributing to my business. I want there to be flexibility about how I move people in and out of my company, which is why we need to lock arms with the employment attorneys around there, because there's a lot of complexity to that. But to put this big umbrella over everybody and say, okay, we're everybody back. Really? Does my accounts payable person who is sitting, by the way, when he's here, he's sitting in a cube by himself banging away on some document. Why can't he be somewhere else? Why are they here? Why am I paying that person for the trouble of traveling to my office? Why can't that person do accounts payable for me and for 5 other companies? Why am I not buying that person by the drink? And so I think that what's interesting about this transition and how we've moved everybody out is a little bit your point about I'm bringing people back to see as a way to kind of cull the herd or kind of sift through it. But I think it's not just that way as a reason to get rid of them. It's a way to say, who do I selectively need to bring back? And I think the important thing, and I think you've hit on it, Fred, and you did it too, even you did, Nick, is that there's so many of these roles that are growing roles. They're ones that I need to have somebody learn from the people around me. And those are, either I need to get these people together in other venues or I need to get their butts back in the business.
Interesting thing you said, it reminded me of every article I've read. It says X, Y, and Z company is bringing everyone back. And then it's comma, and there's a list of 27 exceptions. Yeah. Like everyone that was already remote before COVID, right. And this entire department and that entire department. And it's really just people that have been with us for 12 months. and we're forcing the experienced people to come in 3 days a week to mentor them. And so I don't think there's this blanket umbrella that everyone has to be back. I also think it's incredibly interesting that small companies, Fred, you're a one-person company. The Chamber has 34 employees. We're a small company. We were never remote. I mean, we were always, in anyone in manufacturing logistics, other than maybe 2 or 3 people in the front office, everybody was at the office. Because how do you do manufacturing logistics in your living room? You don't. Yeah. And so this whole blanket is like everyone was remote, or now everyone's coming back. Okay, hey, and it's been 4 years since COVID. We were never we did a little flexibility, especially when schools weren't available. We said if you're a parent, that's a different thing, and we'll make the adjustment. But it's so interesting. Really we heard a lot of it in 24, and we're going to continue to hear it in 25. I think is what we all agreed is it'll continue. But it's just it seems to be Fortune 500. A Russell 5000. Correct. These larger companies is really what we're talking about because all the small and medium-sized companies arguably have been back since the summer of 2020. Yeah. But nobody talks about that, which there's a lot more small and medium-sized companies than there are the large companies.
Well, to bootstrap on a good point that Jeff made, what he described in deciding who he wants to come back into the office, that level of deliberation, that reflects a skill set of how to manage people. And many companies may elevate someone to a managerial position who doesn't know how to manage people. They don't know to ask the kind of questions that Jeff will ask about, well, do I really need my accounts payable person to be in the office physically in a cubicle? And so a lot of my clients will have management training specifically for someone who gets promoted into a supervisory position to try to give them those tools and begin to build that skill set. But another thing that I think it's probably just natural to Jeff, but I think many businesses will probably have to start thinking along these lines is the accounts payable person he mentioned, he said, why can't that person also do the same kind of work for 5 other companies? And the confidence that that Jeff is going to provide an environment for that employee to want to be connected to Jeff, to provide that service to Jeff, but also will know that Jeff wants that person to grow as an individual and as a business contributor. I think that will make the connection between Jeff and that person even stronger because it's not just a purely transactional situation where, okay, you do my accounts payable and I'll talk to you next month or next quarter, whatever. And I think that interest in seeing someone grow and facilitating that that leadership model, I think, is different than it may have been 15 or 20 years ago. Certainly when I started out in the law firm, one of the big name partners in orientation, he told us that when he was on his honeymoon, he got a call from the office and came back to do the work. And he bragged about it, like, that's how dedicated I am. And we were all like, that's stupid. We didn't say that, but we were thinking that.
You just did. You just said it was stupid.
Yeah, live to 10 million listeners.
And think about that today. It's just laughable that someone would, number one, want to do that, and number two, would want to brag about it. And so the leadership philosophy and just mindset has changed so dramatically in the last 25 years, the last 5 years. And I think those leaders who recognize that and embrace it and figure out a way to navigate it rather than, punch the clouds in the sky and complain about it, those are going to be ones that continue to thrive.
This transition, however you want to say it, whether it's a re-centralization or whether it's a rethinking of this mass decentralization, whatever, it is such an amazing opportunity for management, such an amazing opportunity for this new generation, because this is the one time you can say one time. There's been a lot of these times in history, but this is a really unique time to differentiate yourself because, to your point, now I'm in a situation where I have talent around me. I can attract them by creating systems that empower them to have some flexibility, but more importantly, to drive their careers. Right. So I'll go back to my accounts payable person. Right. Well, I can try to keep them in a certain box and be working for me because that's what I need to do. I need to have that role, right? Or I can empower them to go out and actually build their own business and I'll become a client of yours. That thinking decreases my costs, makes a person far more loyal to me, but also sends a signal to everyone else in my company that I'm all about results. I want the company to be successful. And if that means you're more successful or too successful for me to keep, fantastic. Well, couple things happen. One is I am decreasing my costs. I'm improving my performance, and I'm actually attracting talent that no one else can attract. And that's something that I think we're always sitting there going, I'm throwing things out on Indeed. Why aren't people joining my company? Because you suck as a manager. That's why they're not joining your company, right? So this is a great opportunity to change that trajectory of your own business by saying, I need to manage differently, maybe more complex. There's more complexity to it again. I'm not trying to minimize my complexity. At the same time, the entire employee force, almost on the other end of that yin yang, they've all been told by everyone around them that your future is sitting at home in your boxer shorts and on Zoom calls. Your ability to differentiate is almost by going out and saying, I don't require that flexibility. Like I can, if you've got a 20-year-old kid right now, you want them to differentiate, put on a pair of pants and go to work. They're just, holy cow, who's this kid who shows up every day is working? And that person is going to move up to that organization because they've differentiated. That's all they need to do. And so I think in a weird way, we're at a moment right now where the ability to differentiate as an employee or as a manager, as an entrepreneur, has never been easier because there's so much dysfunction in those roles around us. It's an interesting time for me, for sure.
A couple points I want to. You were describing with your AP analogy. Mm-hmm. I refer to that as a fractional employee.
Yeah.
Or it could be a consultant. It's whatever you want to call it. But I mean, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and I think for me, and it makes a bunch of employment attorneys very uncomfortable around me, is I really like to blur those lines completely. To me, an employee versus a contractor versus a fractional person versus whatever is almost not even a designation that I like to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say you're not like everyone else, because I think for the audience, and I love this discussion because I think for a small and medium-sized company in 2025, I think, just to put a term on it, the fractional employee, the fractional consultant, the super expert you could never afford, but you could maybe afford that person 20% of their time. Let's talk about that. I mean, you're probably a fractional. For other companies now, Fred, yourself.
I would agree with that. I don't know that it's labeled that way, but they certainly know that I can provide a specific kind of expertise when they have a need for it, they pull me in. It used to be, going back to the good old days or the bad old days, however you want to phrase it, when I had an employment law client, the firm would want me to bring them in and try to sell them on corporate law and general litigation and real estate and tax and immigration. And so there was always this notion that, yes, you're going to provide this one service, but we want them to embrace all of our services. And now I think the client base is a lot more discerning about what they want to pay for. And so it is, in essence, a fractional relationship where I come in, do what I need to do, step back out. And I was curious about Jeff's point that he wants to blur those lines. And as an employment lawyer, I did kind of shudder a little bit.
I saw that.
But it goes back to something we've been talking about already. That is, how hard do you want to work as a manager? And if you're not willing to put in that level of effort, then maybe your life will be easier because you know you've got these 1099 relationships, you've got these pure employment relationships, but you lose out on some things, and some of the things that Jeff has mentioned. One of the points that I came across in preparing for today's discussion was how AI is going to impact the workplace. And I saw some articles suggesting that AI is going to make things more efficient to the point where maybe there's a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. Because I'm kind of a Luddite, I have not embraced AI. I mean, it has had an impact in the legal field because for things like large document productions and review, I think it can be useful. But I'm curious, in the new paradigm that you described, Jeff, differentiating yourself, how do you see AI kind of impacting all of that? I know it's a very broad question, but
Yeah.
I know you can answer it because you're Jeff Spence.
Because I like to talk. Yeah. So yes, I think. One is, I laugh because Alexander Graham Bell, one of the issues when he invented the telephone was that this is going to reduce the work week now down to 3 or 4 days a week because now we can call each other, right? It hasn't happened yet. And then we've had computers and we've had every single thing that's come up has been this wonderful opportunity to reduce the work week. Apparently humans still like to work, and we're in a competitive environment, which means AI is going to simplify. It's going to automate a lot of stuff, and it does already. It's in everything. We're talking about it as if it's a thing coming. It's in everything already. It's already here. But
I'm a much better writer than the last
oh
year.
God, I'm amazing. I'm an amazing writer.
And I did not take a creative writing course.
Wow, Nick's amazing. Was that iambic pentameter? Yes, it was, Jeff. But what it's really doing, like every single technology that's come out before, it's rewarding the people who can use that tool to spend more time of their day utilizing that tool to create more value. Right? So, the computer revolution, it benefited the people who are great at computers, who could leverage those things to create value. Internet, same thing. Software, everything's been the same way. AI is coming out, right? It still blows me away that high schools and colleges haven't completely said you must have be very, very proficient at AI prompt writing. You must be a prompt engineer. If you want to survive in this world, if you can't write very, very aggressive and efficient AI prompts, then you are going to lose. You can't outwork somebody who can write better prompts than you. It's not possible in the work environment. So I think that those types of things are key. So the attorney that can write better prompts will be a better attorney for me. Right? A doctor, frankly, who can write better prompts is going to be a better doctor because they can search through medical history and medical things far better than anyone else can. They know which questions to ask. But you can have somebody that may not have a medical degree who can ask better questions and may get a better answer than a physician that graduated from Stanford or something. So that's the impact of AI, I think. And I say I think. I know it's happening now. And then on the blurring of those lines, when you also go back historically, I love just going back and looking at these things. We we all had our internal, we had a motor pool before, right? Big businesses, we all had a motor pool. And then we had the guys who did the oil changes and fixed the tires on our cars because they were all company cars. How many companies right now have motor pools? Zero, right? Then it was IT services. We all did our own computer maintenance and all these things. That's all been outsourced. So everything that we've now that was once new and was valuable to us, as that thing became mainstream, well, we had outsourced providers got better at that than us because they could do multiples. They could service more companies, and we outsourced it. As we're bringing things back, are those roles the motor pool? Are those roles, right, the IT services? Are those roles, whatever it might be, back into the business, or should we be outsourcing those? And I think in many cases, if we really look at it, those things should be outsourced. As a matter of fact, if we're great managers, we hook our people up in the business to create their own companies outside of us. We actually say, I want you to spawn a company to serve me. I'll be your anchor client. Because then I know my service is going to be great as I outsource it. That's the person who's doing it for me. But go find 4 or 5 other clients and build a business.
And you said that earlier when you used the accounts payable person.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought that was great. Because that person, first of all, is going to be tethered back to you. You're the person that gave them the upstart.
Yeah.
Depending on your situation, you might even finance them
Yeah.
to get
yeah.
it started for a cut of the company.
I do.
Yeah. Well, I know. Well, I know you. You see
That's
opportunity.
awesome. Yeah. It's an amazing thing to do.
It's incredible, too, because then that person, they're not going to be attending company meetings. They're not going to be distracted. They're going to be becoming the best AP, the most efficient AP person possible. But Fred, I thought you were going to say this, and maybe this is what you were alluding to, but does that hurt the culture? Because you said there's plus and minuses to having a 1099 employee, and if you it's like how many people are going to be left that's not a 1099 or a vendor? And I'm just curious on your thoughts about that.
Well, I don't know that being a 1099 contractor as opposed to an employee necessarily shapes whether someone feels like a part of the culture of the organization. Even if they're not a W-2 employee, if they're there physically, if they're interacting with the team members, that distinction may not make a difference. So I don't know that I think whether someone's a 1099 or a W-2 really limits their ability to impact on the culture of the company or prevents them from helping to shape the culture of the company. This has been educational for me already, the thing about the AI prompt, because the practice of law has changed somewhat, but it's still hasn't fully embraced some of the technology. I think that story from within the last 6 months about a lawyer who used AI, found a case, cited it to a judge. The case didn't exist, and they ended up getting sanctioned. And that may dovetail back to what you said about being a good manager. You don't just pull something off of AI and just assume that it's do your own legwork to make sure that it is what it is. But the notion
genius,
of
by the way, I love it.
an AI prompt, that's something that in my own practice I'll start to consider, because I want to continue to be a viable option for someone who's in Jeff's shoes, who's looking for someone who can be responsive to their needs and conversant in how to meet those needs, and fully conversant. I think the AI prompt is something I'll have to do some homework on after we finish today's discussion.
Yes. It's genius. It is the way of the future.
Hey guys, I'm David Greer, and I'm the publisher of the Guide to Gwinnett, and we are so excited this year to be working with the Chamber to produce what we think is going to be the biggest, best, most comprehensive Guide to Gwinnett ever. Going to be a lot of pages in there that tout the Chamber's services, and basically just a pro-business cheer for all you guys out there working day to day, making Gwinnett what it is. So I invite all of you to step up and advertise. We've got some special deals for Chamber members, exclusive deals, special discounts. Call on us if we can help you. Look forward to having you in this year's Guide to Gwinnett.
Well, okay, future 2025. Thank you for that segue. So AI, it's here. Learning how to use it will make you more effective in 2025. Using fractional 1099 employees, that's I think the fractional term is people have been using 1099 folks forever, but it seems to be really permeating with they're literally fractional consulting firms. Very popular the last 5 to 10 years. That seems to be growing. Anything else in 2025 as a business trend for small businesses, entrepreneurs?
Well, from the pure legal perspective, there's been a good amount of activity in the last 6 to 12 months that will have a direct impact on businesses, and with the change in administration, some of these trends are going to be accelerated. Just a couple of weeks ago, a court in Texas struck down the salary threshold increase that was set to kick in on January 1 for the exemption under the Fair Labor Standards Act. That threshold was going to go from $43,888 to $58,000 and change, but because of this federal court decision, that will not go into effect. And with the new administration, I don't think there's going to be an appetite to revive that. And one of the elements of that decision that did not get as much attention is there was also an increase that the law required happen on July 1st of last year. That change, that higher threshold, has also been done away with. So it really is turned back to things the way they were a year ago. But that's one of the things that I think employers are going to have to figure out. What do you do if you gave someone a raise in July 1 in 2024, but now you're not legally obligated to do that? Do you try to claw that back, or how do you manage that? We talked before we went on camera about non-competition agreements and so forth. And those two have been, there's, again, a court in Texas entered a nationwide injunction so that the antipathy towards non-competition agreements is not something that companies have to worry about them being struck down. I think there's some value in it. But again, trying to bootstrap on what Jeff said, I think being flexible about how you want to try to use those as a manager. Do I want everyone to try to sign these, or do I want to be deliberate and think about what I need to protect, and is there a different way to do it? And there's some different ways to do it, but I think most businesses are relieved to know that the non-competition ban is not going to go into effect.
If I could say, in 2024, there was a phase-in of the DOL mandate, which really began earlier this year. And I'm aware of other companies that already adjusted people's work hours. Either they had to choose, am I going to will I be in an overtime situation? Will I stay in hourly? And I know of companies that already made all those changes because there were some other deadlines based on your salary level that they've already retracted those. And then I know people, it was $58,800 was the minimum for a employer. They'd have to go to an hourly employee. And they're trying to, this thing's happening. It was supposed to happen before the end of this year. Yeah. And so they already adjusted people's salaries that they didn't want overtime. So they got now other companies were stalling. And we reached out because we wanted to communicate to our members, to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, how do they feel this is going to go? And they felt, especially with the administrative change at the presidential level, that this would be shot down. Where and when and how, they weren't sure. But the one thing I know, I spent over 13 years recruiting, retaining, and expanding companies, both international companies, companies in the United States, and domestic companies, is companies like certainty. And we sure have not given companies certainty. The non-compete situation and now this DOL thing, which I really didn't pay attention until I was reading these articles. The DOL thing actually showed that this was a deal that got shot down again in 2017. And the one thing that's great about America is we are a business-friendly country. I think it's this great experiment's been working. We're not perfect, but it works. I think there's a couple of proof points.
We'll keep it going for a while.
Yeah, it seems to be okay. But the certainty is so important to companies, and I'm excited about these things getting shot down. As the chamber CEO, I don't think anyone would be shocked by that. That's not a bold statement by any means. But I also want to see certainty for our members, so they can conduct their business. Business is complex enough. We don't need government monkeying with how we do it. People need to be paid fairly. I also, and I'm sure Fred, you'd have an opinion on this for sure. I don't understand how. I mean, this is a very complex country with 50 states, and things are not the same everywhere. But to blanketly say 58,800 is the number that someone needs to be paid before, or they have to be hourly. I mean, I don't know where that came from, but
Well, the
Fever dream or something. Yeah.
the Fair Labor Standards Act, truth be told, if it could be completely overhauled, it would be a great thing. But the amount of legislative will to do that it just doesn't exist. But in many ways, it's a very outdated law. So you're trying to put a round peg in a square hole. But I'd be curious to see how companies have successfully said, "Hey, we told you we're going to raise your salary to $58,800, but actually we're not going to do that because we don't have to."
yeah. I've not heard it. That's going to be very interesting. I have not heard. I've heard people say, "Hey, we did it, and we're going to live with it."
Yeah.
I've not heard anybody say I'm going to pull it back.
Oh my gosh!
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got a couple of openings, so I hope that happens.
I'm glad you said that because to me, the dysfunction in employment law is the greatest boom for, again, great managers, great entrepreneurs. Dysfunction is what allows you, again, to differentiate. You go out and you're saying, hey, all the great managers that I know around the world, I've never heard any one of them say, what's my legal obligation to pay this person X? I've never heard that. Like, what's the very minimum that I'm required, that I got to pay this person to have them come here? I'm trying to recruit talent. I want to get the best people here. And that's not just at the senior executive level. That's all the way down to the person who's welding on the steel vats in the back of this manufacturing facility. I want the best person, which means I'm trying to pay that person more than they're currently being paid because I think I can generate more value from that. So whether it's $40,000, $50,000, whatever it might be, what happens, unfortunately, is when these laws come into place, the uncertainty, right? Well, when uncertainty comes in, it dries up the capital that's available to that company, whether it comes from debt and banks or whether it comes from equity, from private equity or public markets or whatever. The cascading impact of that is extraordinary to the point where you're saying, hey, we're just going to reduce the number of shifts we have. We're going to stop the growth of this business. We're going to slow it down. We don't have the capital to pour into this thing. And so the people who think they're getting this bump from 45, whatever it is, to 58, find out they went 45, 58, 0. Because the cash dried up, right? So I mean, the best way to get them paid more and more and more is, to your point, Nick, is to provide certainty. And if you can do that, then everybody's going to put money in that thing, and it's going to continue to drive.
Very good point. I want to go back. Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yes.
Don't you think Elon Musk and Vivek are going to fix all that?
When the Cybertruck works without any issues, then I'll have more confidence that the Doge department will undo all the evils that exist in big government.
It's going to be amazing to hear all of their recommendations. But Fred, you said the key thing that's going to is there a legislative appetite? Yeah. I mean, the House has to run every 2 years.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot of great things, and we'll all be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but then nothing will happen. But that's the political system and the pendulum swinging back and forth.
It's a lot different being the chief executive of a company because you can say, I want this done, and your team will try to do it. When you try to do that in Washington or any government, you say, I want this done. Say, great, the sky's still blue.
Yep.
Who cares?
Welcome to our bureaucracy. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is
Well, they're going to form a
whole world.
committee, right? And we'll research it, and you'll be out of office.
We were just talking about the remote worker thing, and I think that, matter of fact, I'm almost certain that Vivek and Elon, this is their approach. I call them by the first name because we're close. I think both of their approaches to reduce the government spend. I think the majority of it's going to be on forcing government employees to come back to the office. And I think that to your point about culling the herd, I think that is going to be the easiest and quickest way to reduce government spend for them, is just to say, all right, no problem, come back.
Yeah.
And these people spent the last 4 years, walking their dog and doing conference calls are going to say, not so much.
It'd be very interesting. I wonder what % of them actually left the greater DC
Oh
area.
yeah, huge number.
Live in
Huge
Montana.
number. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
They don't actually have to do a downsizing. Guys, in our remaining time, 2025 trends. We've talked about some really interesting things. Other thoughts.
From a legal perspective, there's the expectation that immigration enforcement within the workplace is going to be ramped up. The I-9 investigations, audits, raids, and so forth. I think that's a reasonable expectation that there'll be more of those in 2025 once the new administration moves into office. So I think that's something that employers just need to have their ducks in a row. Have your I-9s organized and available. And one challenge, though, is going to be for businesses to figure out, how to engage workers who may be here on a visa. Technological folks. Mm-hmm. Jeff can probably, I'm sure, can speak to this better than I can. But my understanding is that that's been a challenge for a number of years. Is how do you bring in folks who have a specific expertise that either is not available in the U.S. or is not available at the level that entrepreneurs and innovators want. So I think that to the extent that was the case in the past, maybe Elon and Vivek will thin out some of those agencies who deal with immigration issues and make it more challenging, because I've had clients in the agricultural space who have concerns about being able to get work done and have used the visa program to get the work done, and that may be more challenging once President Trump moves back into office. But I don't know, Jeff, if you had to deal with that, bringing folks in on visas and that whole process.
Yeah, the visa process is, unfortunately, we lose, back a little bit, the predictability we talked about earlier, we lose a ton of talent that would remain here and be extraordinarily productive and hire tons of people because they're smart. Because we make that process as convoluted as we possibly can, and it's criminal, actually. But I also think that the people who make the laws, those nasty attorneys, these people that they also don't want a whole sea full of these foreign highly qualified attorneys coming in and taking their jobs. So there's some down pressure from the talent in this country that says, I like certain classes of people to come in for certain jobs, but I don't want them coming in and taking over all the executive leadership positions.
Well, the immigration framework, it's been criticized since I started practicing in 1992. I don't do immigration law. I've dabbled in it here and there. But there's a lot of inefficiency within the law and the process and how long it takes and how many folks are in place at the immigration agency to deal with visa applications. And it's ripe for the kind of innovation that Vivek and Elon say they're going to bring. So, and because they're both in the technology space, maybe they'll be more focused on how to fix that issue in that space. But it's something that I think is going to be a challenge, and I think, Jeff, you're experiencing it firsthand. But it's a shame that we're losing out as an economy on having folks who could do innovation and make a bigger pie for everyone to have a slice of.
Agree. And I think so. From my perspective, I think going into 2025, I think we're at a kind of a very interesting kind of a confluence here of a ton of different things that have happened. One is, I think COVID in a strange way helped do this, and it was create this remote worker interface effectively. We talked about the inefficiencies of it. We talked about how it impacts their ability to grow inside of a company. Totally true. But we've also done is we've allowed all these individual kind of disparate organizations to connect in a way that that couldn't connect beforehand. So before, as an organization, I had to have inside the walls of my building, I had to have all of this talent. I want to build something cool, great, hire my engineering team. I could kind of outsource it, but I knew what I wanted to go do. Right now, you have the capacity for the first time ever to really say, hey, we can fundamentally rework what we sell, who we sell to, the problems we solve for customers, and we could sit at this table right now with these cool microphones, and we could connect into and outsource to providers that solve those problems, which means that we have this for the first time, really, with AI and everything else that's coming, the ability for really, really good thinking, smart people who understand their customers really well to solve bigger and bigger problems for them that never been solved before, because we can now integrate them in a way we couldn't do before, because we were forced to, again, have to be inside the walls of our business. So, and you're seeing it right now, tons of things that are out there where you've got, solopreneurs who are launching these, medical businesses and things like this, because all I really want to do is connect the surgeons with the schedulers, with the whatever. And we think of it's kind of this like they're half businesses. No, they're not. These are fully functioning businesses providing extraordinary talent, but we just need to be able to communicate those things, button them up the right way. And I think that AI is going to be an extraordinary tool for that, and this acceptance that people don't need to work inside of our walls to be successful to pair these different resources together.
Is it true you just recently wrote a book? Wanted to close on.
I did recently write a book. Yes, I did.
And what's the title?
The title is called Unconstrained. It's called Fueling Opportunities and Unsucking Your Business.
Yeah. Oh, Unsucking Your Business.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful.
Yes.
And if I was interested in buying a second copy, where would I go?
Thank you, Nick. It's Amazon.com. So Jeff Spence, Unconstrained.
After you're done reading Jeff's book, and the listeners they want to get a hold of you for some legal advice, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Give me a call at 404-974-9543, or you can see me here at the Chamber. I'm here most of the time.
Awesome. And now for the Gen Zs, how would they get a hold of you? Because they're never going to call you.
My website, www.fcd-law.com. I don't have an Instagram page.
Well, we appreciate that.
So
we'll fix that.
But that's the best way to reach me, is either through the website or just give me a call.
Great. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Gwinnett Chamber. Thank you for doing that. All of your information is listed on the member page under attorneys. Fred Dawkins, you're there, and we appreciate your engagement at the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. You're a great board member, great friend of mine. I appreciate you so much. Jeff, always fun. Unsuck your business. I love it. That's awesome. Intriguing. I am at page 89 on your book, and it's incredible, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think I may have shared this with you, but I'll share it with the listeners. As I'm reading it, I read it in your voice. And so when you say something that I know that's funny, I'm laughing, and I feel like you're there laughing with me.
I am. I'm there laughing with you.
Thank you.
In your bedroom.
Laughing with you. You made it weird. But fantastic book. The right time, too. I think it's really great.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Yeah, and as a 2025 New Year's resolution, if you're a business leader, I do think it's a fantastic book. And Fred, you've helped the Chamber many times as we've had to navigate things in regards to employment. So I appreciate you. And thanks for being here, both of you today, here at the incredible Gas South District, right here in the heart of Gwinnett County. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Nick.